Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. I wasn't expecting anyone to be on the shared balcony that late in the evening. The air was warm, the lights low, and I stepped out only to breathe for a moment. But when I turned, he was already there. Leaning on the rail, arms folded, the street glow brushing along his jawline. I felt it before I saw it. His presence. That quiet energy he carried that always made my pulse skip for reasons I pretended not to understand. "Didn't mean to startle you," he said softly, but there was something playful under his voice, something he knew I heard. I brushed a strand of hair behind my ear, suddenly too aware of how close we were standing. "You didn't," I lied. My heartbeat had already picked up. He must have noticed. He shifted just a step, but enough that our shoulders almost touched. Almost. The space between us thinned into something warm, something dangerous. The kind of closeness you feel more than see. When I reached for the balcony rail, his hand moved at the same time. Our fingers brushed, barely a second, and yet it felt like the whole night held its breath. Heat shot up my arm, quick and sharp, and I pulled back too fast, as if the touch had revealed more than I was ready to admit. He smiled, slow, knowing. "You felt that," he murmured. My breath hitched. I looked away, but he stepped in just enough that I could feel the warmth of his body behind me. Not touching, but close enough that my nerves vibrated. "That was nothing," I whispered, though the tremor in my voice betrayed me. He leaned closer, not touching my skin, but letting his breath skim the side of my neck for the briefest moment. "Don't pretend you didn't feel that too." My grip tightened on the rail. The night seemed louder, the silence between us heavier. Everything inside me tightened with the tension I'd been pretending wasn't there for weeks. I turned slightly toward him, just enough to see his eyes, steady, bold, waiting. And then, the balcony door behind us creaked. A voice called my name. I froze. He didn't move, and the moment we were about to fall into shattered, leaving something unfinished hanging between us, electrified and impossible to ignore. Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The creak of the balcony door still echoed in my mind long after I stepped back inside. I should have walked away, pretended nothing had happened. But the truth was, nothing had been happening for years, at least in my marriage. My husband and I used to share everything. Late-night talks, whispered jokes, small touches that felt like promises. But lately, our conversations had become practical, polite, and painfully distant. Work, bills, errands. It felt like we were roommates sharing schedules instead of a life. So when our new neighbor moved in, warm smile, effortless charm, the kind of presence that made the air shift, I noticed. I shouldn't have, but I did. And apparently he noticed me too. The morning after the balcony moment, I tried to keep my thoughts steady, but my chest tightened when I saw him in the hallway, holding a bag of groceries and wearing that same soft smile. I told myself not to look at him for too long, not to read into anything. But the moment my eyes met his, my pulse betrayed me again. "About last night," he began. I swallowed hard. "We should forget it happened." He nodded, but something flickered in his eyes. Disappointment, maybe, or curiosity, or both. But then he said quietly, "If you truly wanted to forget, you wouldn't be avoiding my eyes right now." My breath caught. It was too early for emotions that deep, too early for truths I wasn't ready to admit. I stepped past him, pretending not to hear. But as I brushed by, his hand steadied the grocery bag, and for a second, our fingers touched again. Just a graze. Just enough. The rest of the day felt different. Every little sound from the apartment next door reminded me he was there. Close enough to touch, far enough I shouldn't. When my husband came home that evening, he kissed my cheek. Gentle, routine, distant, and asked about dinner. His eyes didn't search mine the way they used to. His touch didn't linger. We talked about work like co-workers passing time. Halfway through the conversation, I realized something painful. I missed being seen. Later that night, as I stood by the living room window, I saw him again. Outside on his balcony, leaning against the rail, looking up at the sky. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. And the moment he turned his head and noticed me, that same electric awareness sparked again. He didn't call out. He didn't wave. He just held my gaze. Steady, warm, questioning. And I didn't look away. For the first time in years, someone's eyes felt like a place I wanted to stay. Disclaimer. This story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The next evening, the tension felt different. Heavier, sharper, almost impatient. I tried distracting myself. Cleaning, cooking, scrolling through my phone. But nothing drowned out the awareness of him just one thin wall away. My husband had left early for a work dinner, barely giving me more than a distracted goodbye. I watched the door close, feeling strangely hollow. A part of me hated how quickly my thoughts drifted to the man next door. Another part didn't fight it at all. I stepped onto the balcony for some air, telling myself it wasn't to see him. But he appeared seconds later, as if he had been waiting, though he pretended he hadn't. "Quiet night," he said, leaning against the railing. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, revealing the kind of effortless confidence he didn't even seem aware of. "Yeah, quiet," I answered, though my heart wasn't. For a moment we simply stood there. But silence with him was never really silent. It hummed between us, warm and dangerous. Then he asked, almost too casually, "Your husband not home?" The question struck deeper than it should have. Jealousy, soft but undeniable, hid beneath his tone. "No," I said. "Work dinner." His jaw tightened just slightly. It wasn't anger, more like frustration mixed with something he was trying to hold back. "Does he usually leave you alone like this?" he asked. I shouldn't have answered. I shouldn't have let my truth slip through. But I did. "Lately, yes." He stepped closer. Not touching, but close enough that my breathing changed. I could feel the warmth coming off him, the tension tightening the air. "You shouldn't be lonely," he murmured. My pulse jumped. "I'm not." "You are," he said softly, eyes locking with mine. "And you know it." Something flickered in me. Fear, longing, excitement, guilt, all tangled, all real. Before I could respond, a distant sound echoed from his apartment. A woman's voice calling his name. Light, cheerful, familiar. I felt a jolt in my chest I didn't expect. Jealousy, quick, sharp, embarrassing. He noticed. His eyes softened with something like understanding, and something like temptation. "It's just my cousin visiting," he said quietly, voice gentler now. "But you thought otherwise, didn't you?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The silence between us said everything. Disclaimer. This story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The tension had stretched so thin between us that even the simplest moments felt electrically charged. Every night it worsened. Every glance held longer. Every silence pressed tighter against the unspoken truth we were trying, and failing, to ignore. It all came to a breaking point the night the power went out. A sudden flash, a pop somewhere down the block, and the entire apartment building went dark. I stood in my living room staring at the dead lamps, hearing only my own heartbeat as the world slipped into shadows. A soft knock came at my door. I opened it slowly, and there he was, lit only by the faint glow from the emergency lights in the hallway. Hair slightly messy, chest rising a little faster than normal. "You okay?" he asked, voice low. "Yes," I whispered, though my pulse thudded loud enough to betray me. He held up a small flashlight. "Thought you might need this." I nodded, stepping aside. "You can come in if you want." He hesitated only a second before entering, closing the door behind him. The room filled with dim, warm light as he angled the flashlight upward. Shadows danced across the walls, soft and intimate. The air tightened instantly. We stood closer than we ever had, the darkness making every breath sharper. His eyes kept finding mine, then drifting down to my lips, then back to my eyes again, as if he couldn't decide what he was resisting more. "You're shaking," he murmured. "It's dark," I replied. "It's not the dark," he said quietly. I didn't argue. We both knew the truth. He set the flashlight on the table, letting it cast a gentle glow that barely touched the space between us. Then he stepped closer, slow enough to give me time to step back. I didn't. "You know I've been trying," he said, voice nearly a whisper. "Trying to stay away. Trying not to cross a line." My breath hitched. "You haven't. Not yet." The last two words sank deep. He took one more step, our bodies now only inches apart. I could feel the warmth of him, the hesitation, the hunger, the restraint. His hand lifted, slow, careful, and hovered near my cheek without touching. "If I touch you," he whispered, "there's no going back." The flashlight flickered. We both froze. Footsteps echoed outside the door. My husband's voice called my name from the hallway, and everything hung on the edge of one breath. Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The moment my husband's voice echoed from the hallway, every emotion inside me snapped tight. Fear, guilt, longing, all tangled together so fiercely I could hardly breathe. The young man beside me froze too, his hand still hovering inches from my cheek, the closeness between us shimmering on the edge of something irreversible. "Stay," I whispered, barely audible. I wasn't sure if I meant it for him or for myself. He stepped back just as the door opened. My husband entered with his phone flashlight raised, scanning the room. His eyes landed on the man standing a few feet away from me, and confusion flickered across his face. "What's going on?" he asked. Could have lied. I could have said the power went out and he was being neighborly. But my husband looked at me a second too long. Long enough to sense the heaviness in the room, the tension we hadn't had in years. "I brought her a light," the younger man said calmly, lifting the small flashlight from the table. His voice was steady, respectful, but underneath, I heard something else. A quiet protectiveness. My husband nodded stiffly. "Right, thanks." But something had shifted. The air was too thick. My husband's eyes narrowed slightly, watching me more than him. And then came the twist I never expected. My husband sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. "Look, I need to tell you something. Both of you, actually." The young man and I exchanged a startled glance. My husband stepped farther into the room and lowered his light. "I've known for a while that something's wrong between us," he said softly, looking at me first. "I know you're lonely. I know I haven't been here. Not really for a long time." The confession hit me like a punch. He shifted his gaze to our neighbor. "And I've noticed you checking on her, helping her, being there in ways I haven't." The younger man tensed, ready to defend himself, but my husband raised a hand. "No, I'm not angry," he said. "I'm relieved." "Relieved," I breathed. He nodded. A heavy silence followed before he finally said the words I never imagined I'd hear. "I've been seeing someone." The room spun. "She's from work," he continued quietly. "I didn't know how to tell you, and I didn't want to hurt you, but I think you already felt it." My chest tightened, not with betrayal, but with clarity. The distance, the silence, the numbness between us. It all made sense now. He looked between us again, and for the first time, his expression wasn't confused or suspicious. It was knowing. "I don't think I'm the only one whose heart is somewhere else," he said. I froze. The younger man froze. The truth shattered open in the dim light between us. My husband exhaled. "We'll talk about everything. But for now, I'm giving you space." He stepped back toward the door, leaving us in the low glow of the flashlight's warm beam. And just before he walked out, he glanced at the man beside me. A quiet acknowledgement, a silent permission. Then the door clicked shut. The younger man and I stood alone again, breathing the same unsteady air, the truth finally exposed, the danger finally real. But this time, nothing stood between us, except the decision we were about to make. Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The door had barely closed when the silence crashed over us. Heavy, breathless, impossible to escape. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The truth my husband had confessed still hung between us like a storm that had finally broken open. I sank onto the edge of the couch, my hands trembling. "He's been seeing someone?" The words felt unreal, too fragile to hold. The younger man stepped closer, but cautiously, as if afraid a wrong move might shatter me. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "I didn't either," I whispered. I kept blaming myself. I kept thinking I was the problem, that I wasn't enough anymore. His jaw tightened with something fierce, anger maybe, protective frustration. "You deserve better than that," he said. "You deserve someone who actually sees you." His voice cracked on the last word. I looked up at him, eyes burning. "And what about what we've been doing? This whatever this is, it's wrong." He knelt down in front of me, not touching, but close enough that I could feel the heat of his breath. "Then tell me to walk away," he said. "Tell me you don't feel anything and I'll go right now." My breath caught. He wasn't playing anymore. There was no teasing, no charged silence. Just raw truth. "Don't do this," I whispered. "I need to hear it," he insisted. "Do you want me to leave?" I opened my mouth, ready to say the logical answer, the safe answer. But all that came out was a broken exhale that gave everything away. "I don't know," I admitted, voice trembling. "I don't know anything anymore." He closed his eyes, a silent battle visible in the tension of his shoulders. When he looked at me again, his expression had changed, gentler, steadier, but filled with a kind of determination that unsettled me. "Then don't decide right now," he said. "Feel it. Let yourself feel everything you've been suppressing. My throat tightened. I'm scared. I am too, he said. But that doesn't mean we stop. Before I could respond, a loud knock jolted us both. My husband. The younger man stood instantly, fists clenching at his sides, as if preparing himself for whatever waited on the other side. I forced myself to breathe and open the door. My husband stood there. No anger, no accusations, just a tired sadness. We need to talk, he said. Not about him, about us. It was the confrontation I had avoided for months, maybe years. We sat at the kitchen table, the younger man respectfully stepping out onto the balcony, giving us space while still staying close enough for me to feel his presence. My husband exhaled. I think we both know the truth, he said. Our marriage has been over for a long time. We just never said it out loud. Tears stung my eyes. Not because of him, but because of everything we'd lost without even noticing. He reached across the table, not to hold my hand, but to offer something I never expected. Let's end this respectfully. Honestly, before we hurt each other more. I nodded slowly, my heart aching, but also strangely lighter. When he left again, this time for the night, the younger man stepped back inside. He looked at my tear-streaked face, at the empty doorway, at the truth finally collapsing into place. And without touching me, without saying a single word, he gave me a look that felt like a promise. A promise that the end of one thing didn't mean the end of everything. Disclaimer. This story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The day the papers were signed, the air felt different, lighter, quieter, as if the weight of years had finally lifted off my chest. My marriage ended not with a fight, but with two people accepting the truth they had ignored for far too long. There were tears, yes, but they were soft, releasing something instead of breaking something. When I stepped out of the courthouse, I expected to feel empty. Instead, I felt open, and he was there, leaning against his car, hands in his pockets, eyes finding mine the moment I appeared. No dramatic gesture, no rushing toward me. Just a quiet presence that felt steady in a world that had spun too much lately. I didn't want you to walk out alone, he said. My breath softened. You didn't have to wait. I know, he replied. I wanted to. There was a comfort in his voice, in the way he said it. Not possessive, not eager, just honest. Like he had finally stopped fighting whatever pulled us together. We walked to the park nearby, where early evening sunlight filtered through the trees, casting warm gold across the path. For a while we didn't talk. Our shoulders brushed now and then. Small, grounding touches that felt more intimate than anything bold could. Finally, he exhaled. I was scared I pushed too hard, that I made things harder for you. I shook my head gently. You didn't push me. You just made me realize I wasn't invisible. He slowed his steps, turning to face me fully. You were never invisible. Not to me. The words hit deeper than he probably expected. I felt my throat tighten, my eyes stinging. Not from pain, but from the exhaustion of holding myself together for too long. He stepped a little closer, not rushed, not hesitant, just present. I don't want to rush you, he said softly, but I want to be here, with you, if you'll have me. A tear slipped before I could stop it. He reached out slowly, giving me every second to pull away. I didn't. His fingers brushed my cheek, gentle and warm, and I leaned into the touch without thinking. For once, I whispered, I want to choose something for myself, He smiled, small, relieved, beautiful. Then choose me. I took his hand, lacing my fingers with his. The simplest gesture, but it felt like the most honest thing I'd done in years. We sat on a park bench as the sun dipped lower, the world around us softening to dusk. He wrapped his arm around me, not possessively but protectively, and I let my head rest against his shoulder. For the first time in a long time, there was no guilt, no uncertainty, no fear. Just warmth, just peace, just him. And as the sky shifted from gold to purple, my heart settled into something new. A beginning, soft and certain, waiting to grow.